Well, hello. How they used to say it back in the 50s. Hello out there in television land. Hey, this is Bob Gums bringing you the Concerned Forum. And I am really distraught. I think unless you're a card carrying member of the KKK or some similar organization, then you should be kind of distraught also. Now, as Marvin Gaye always says, what's going on? Well, I tell you, we have just come to the realization in the media world that what we're doing with Trump and the whole trial thing, look, this should have been done last year, or excuse me, in 2021. Okay? The idea that, well, we want to be, gentle um, and nice because after all, he was the president. That's BS. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to disrespect the AG, Attorney General, um, or what's my man's name, Jack Smith, uh, especially Brother Smith. He seems like a very solid, stand-up kind of guy. But I think that, especially with the AG, I think that this feeling that somehow they must follow this code of being nice to presidents. Hey, man, we're a democracy. And, in Western Europe, when their leader, when the head person screws up, they go to jail. It's just that simple. And the birds still fly, the rain still comes down, right? People still drink wine and dance and sing, but they know that they have a democracy that they can depend upon. One of the reasons why um, Trump seems like he has a certain amount of solid support is because Americans are not, I don't want to say all of us, but many of us, I don't want to say that we're not that bright um, because of the aspersions that brings to mind. But we have a problem in this country um, dealing with knowledge. Am I saying that everyone should be able to calculate the exact distance between, say, New York or D.C. and the moon? No, I'm not saying that. But there's supposed to be a certain basic day to day knowledge of what your government, how it's supposed to perform, what's right and what's wrong. And for some reason, well, I got my suspicions. Um, Americans, we don't like to uh, get into that and see that getting in uh, to the basics of how your government is supposed to work. Whether you like it or not, that's an important part of democracy. And for some reason, we have really uh, let that slide. Now, talking about Trump and his support, I mm, because as a nation, I'm hemming and hawing here because this is very touchy ground. but it's ground that must be touched. And I think that one of the problems is that there's a certain segment of the ruling class that basically they want to feed working class Americans. And when I say working class, I'm talking about people that have to get up in the morning and go to work, bring home a paycheck. Okay, these folks in that working class, we have been fed all these fairy tales about American history, really about history in general. I know from experience, and that's one of the good things that you pick up in the military, because you are dealing with people, or at least it used to be that way, dealing with people from broad sectors of the population. And many Americans, like I said, not only do we not know who we are and where we come from, we don't know a damn thing about anybody else, relatively speaking. I always say, what are we losing now? About what, close to 60,000 people. Um, I've always felt that Vietnam was an example of ignorance, quite frankly, because I think that if Americans had some basic knowledge of the world that we live in, we wouldn't have gotten trapped in Vietnam. All right. Remember, all of your heroes. I'm talking about people like MacArthur, Eisenhower, Truman, Harry Truman, right? From the so-called left and the so-called, I would say, conservative side of the house. They all said the same thing. Don't get involved in another land war in Southeast Asia, okay? And what do we wind up doing? Well, 60,000 lives later, uh, we're saying, well, gee, maybe they were right when they said we shouldn't get involved in a war on the Asian mainland, if at all possible. And see, that type of blind ignorance is what's costing us. Another point in that is that, and you saw this on January 6th. I don't have to say January 6th, what was it, 2021, okay? We know what January 6th means, right? I'm sure you folks out there are intelligent enough to know that. But democracy, right? This whole idea of democracy. You had thousands of Trump supporters now running into the nation's capital and basically attacking law enforcement, trying to kill politicians, elected officials. And I still want someone, one of those folks, to tell me what in their mind made them feel that it was so important that they had to come to Washington, D.C., and many of them were prepared to take lives. Some lives were taken, unfortunately. The vice president at that time, Donald Trump, almost cost him and his wife. He almost had their lives taken. That wasn't a toy that was put out there on the Capitol grounds. That was a gallows, where you hang people from. All right, so it wasn't a joke. And I'm still trying to figure out, you know, as we say in the hood, what's up? Yeah, what's up? You're dumping feces in the office of the Speaker of the House. At that time, it was Pelosi. Um, you're running around waving a Confederate flag and a Trump flag. Every so often, you saw an American flag. Why? What was what's your problem? And you never get a straight answer from these people, um, these right wing, what do you want to call them, right wingers or whatever. Okay. Well, Trump cheated. Well, I could find somebody having trying to make a beef out of that, but you had 61 different court cases with judges who were independent, judges who were Democrats, judges who were Republicans, judges who were Republicans and were appointed by Donald Trump himself. And they all said the same thing. There was no cheating. So that makes me start to wonder, well, wait a minute, what got you so damn pissed off? And this whole Trump phenomenon, period. I mean, what did this guy do? Was he delivering free food to your house every night? Free gourmet meals every night? Was he setting you up for a night in a bordello? I mean, what the hell? What's the big deal? The man is a liar. He's a fraud. Everybody here in New York knows it. He has no class. And I'm not saying that he's supposed to be a snob. He's at the other end of the extreme. Okay, the man has no class. He's a pig, and everyone knows this. Yet these people destroyed the nation's capital, or came close to doing it, took human life, and refused to believe their own court system. Now, what propels people to do that? Here in the land of the free and the home of the brave. It was a lynch mob. Okay? I have some experience with lynch mobs. January 6th was a lynch mob. So all of this folderol about, well, they stole the election. Who says they stole the election? 61 federal judges and state judges said no, didn't happen, didn't go down. So it appears to me that what's happened with the Republican Party, and you can see this correlating in a lot of different things. The desire to stop Americans, and not just kids, but adults. People in college, whether you like it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, whether maybe sometimes some of them don't act like it, but they are adults. Right? Most of the time you're in college, you're 18 years old and above. You are an adult. So the same people that felt that, we should attack and burn the Capitol and kill the politicians or the elected officials therein, they usually are with the same crew that wants to stop the teaching of history, right? Want to stop immigration, want to end a woman's right to choose her the course of her health care. You know, you see how all these things kind of fall in together. So what all this is showing me is that the problem that you have with today's Republican Party is that they love America, or they claim to love America. They just don't like a lot of Americans. See, the whole idea of freedom, justice, equality, the American virtues, right? I mean, it sounds nice. I mean, it really does, okay? But in actual fact, especially with the Republican Party, you have these people who really believe that the whole thing about freedom, justice, you know, rule of law, all the, you know, all that good stuff, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, that's for them, okay? When it starts looking like, oh, well, that dark fellow over there, uh, wow, should he have the same American rights that I have? Or that white woman there, um, she feels that because of whatever her circumstances, her health it will be in better shape if she chooses not to carry a child, or excuse me, carrying a fetus at this time. Should her rights be respected the way mine's are? See, the whole thing with this Republican Party right wing uh, movement, um, how should I put this? They're not fighting people who are trying to take away their rights. They want to fight the people who are trying to make sure that all of us have the same rights. Remember the whole basis of America, right? You know, I might be smarter than you. You might be wealthier than me, right? You might be better looking than me, taller, handsomer, more athletic, right? Better intellect. But you and I are equal when it comes to the laws in this country, which is why I feel that it is so important for Donald Trump to be found guilty of his crimes. Now, how much time he goes to jail for and how long and blah blah blah. Well, that's something, you know, to be worked out by the government's lawyers. But the bottom line is, no one is above the law. What's the phrase? No man is above the law. No person is above the law. And see, with the Republican Party, what they have allowed to have happen over the last 20, 30 years, they have gone from being the party of the people and by the people and for the people. They have now become a party really for only certain people. And to extend that even further, not only for certain people to be in their party, but also to enjoy the rights and benefits of being an American. And see, we need to start being honest with ourselves in this country. And if someone, just like when I was overseas, people would ask me questions and I would tell them the biggest problem that we have in America is the fact that we have a very difficult time being honest with ourselves. And that is a huge problem. You know, just like this, what do you call it? Parents, all these, crazy parent organizations. They're just a bunch of bigots hiding behind the fact that they're mothers. All right. I'd be quite frank about it. I don't want to live in a society where education is decided by parents. You have a lot of parents out here who don't have any education. Should the curriculum and the things that my child needs to learn to be able to deal in the 21st and 22nd centuries and beyond, who do I want to be in charge of that? Seriously. What about these parents who are members of the KKK or other similar type organizations? Are we going to entrust our educational systems solely to people like that? I saw a show on MSNBC the other night, and this guy was trying to argue with the host as to why this Moms for America or Patriotic Moms, whatever the crap that crazy organization is called, that they should have the right to get books taken out of the schools. And I wish I was there because I would love that. Well, what are their qualifications? Do each member in this organization, do they have a college degree? Now, you don't need to be you don't have to be a college graduate to have a baby. But I think that you do need to have some form of higher education if you want to start talking about what people need to learn. And somehow, some way, I'm going to try and get together with people and we try and fight this thing. Not so much here in New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut, and there are things in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut that need to be taught better than they are now. But generally, we don't go for a lot of book burning in this neck of the woods. Not anymore. This ain't colonial times, okay? But in some parts of the country, you got people who are, and I'm going to come out and just say it because it needs to be said. You have people in some parts of the country that are ignorant as hell. And that doesn't make them bad people. Remember, ignorance just means that you don't know something. Okay? Doesn't mean you're a bad person. You become a bad person when you wish to glorify and glory in your ignorance. You are a bad person when you try to stop anybody from getting knowledge that goes beyond your little narrow scope. And unfortunately, in this country, we have far too many people, far too many parents who fall in that category. And there should be a movement, especially by top-tier universities across the country, to work with the Department of Education and say, this is what you need to learn to be able to contribute to this society, okay? And to be able to function with your fellow American citizens and function with your neighbors in the rest of the world. These are the things that you need to know. How the hell are we going to maintain a proficiency in business, for example, when you got kids, and you're trying to basically hire kids that think that the whole world is about them? That's one of the problems that we're having the problem that we're having with China right now, to a large extent because of racism. And at this point in time, I don't know if that's going to end well. And remember, I'm speaking now at a time when an administration who I think is supportive of freedom and human rights and et cetera, are the ones in power. But because of a lot of the stuff that happened in the past, I don't know if they're going to be able to get our relationship with China on a peaceful and prosperous and safe, level. And then I listen to people like this ignoramus. I always feel that ignoramus is a person that not only are they they are ignorant, but they want you to be in their ignorant crew. They wish to spread their ignorance, like folks in Texas and like that governor in Florida, see, and who doesn't want people to learn American history because it makes them uncomfortable. Well, if learning about your own history is going to make you that uncomfortable, how in the hell are you going to do business in places like Africa, China, Latin America? Because we have some very bad history with those countries. As a matter of fact, the history that we have dealing with Latin America, Africa, and China is almost as bad as the history of that people of color have had trying to make it here in America. But see, if you weren't educated, if you didn't learn that stuff, then how are you going to be able to deal with that? That's the reason why all of those, press clippings and what have you, that you get out of China now, in one form or another, they're always talking about respect. Well, that's because for so long, China was grossly disrespected by the West. And unfortunately, America, to a large extent, and I'm talking about people who got master's degrees, PhDs, and they don't understand it, right? It's like you have people here in America, and they'll say something like, oh, well, the Jews are just so sensitive. And the blacks, they're always crying about slavery. Now, how in the hell are people like that going to be able to understand the issues of trying to, deal with nations in Africa, deal with China, all right, deal with the things that happen in Latin America and Central America? Because they don't get it. And there are a lot of things in life that people don't get, but they use those who have some basic common sense, say, well, hey, let me find out what this guy is so hot underneath the collar for. And see, that is an American weakness. A lot of Americans don't understand that. And actually, more and more, Who do I see going to Russia? Putin, of all people. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And China and Russia. So you want one of the largest continents in the world with the, I think Africa has probably the most resources, natural resources of any continent on the planet. They have the mineral wealth that the United States that we need to be to continue to be a superpower in the 21st century. And you don't, and too many Americans, they just don't get it. I tell you, quite frankly, as an American, as someone who believes in freedom and democracy, as someone, as a disabled veteran, I'm very, I am super concerned when I see China and Russia running in and out of the world's motherland like it's going out of style. And I said, yes, that's why I said the world's motherland. Okay? 95% of your anthropologists, biologists, scientists tell you what we know as a human being started somewhere around Western Kenya. And that ain't in Brooklyn, okay? But these people, and when I say these people, I'm talking about Africa, their doors are wide open for China and for Russia. Now, what the hell do you think that does? To the world stand, in other words, America continue to being a superpower and what have you. You know, see, Americans, too many of us are not woke, right? And I use the word woke because, in its original term, meaning to be aware, to be awake. We have to stop letting how we function in this country be determined by people like, what's his name, DeSantis down there in Florida. You can't do it. You know, it's insanity. You know, a guy that's going to strip away the rights of women, he waits until midnight to sign some ridiculous anti-abortion bill. That's not the direction that this country needs to be heading in right now, or at any time, to be quite frank about it. And I'm surprised. You know, I was surprised when I saw how many Americans don't know that the Statue of Liberty, part of the reason why the Statue of Liberty was built and given to the United States as a gift was because it was a way to celebrate freedom, democracy, and the American victory over slavery. That's why we have that lady not too far from where I'm sitting right now, because we're not too far from South Ferry, right down the street here. Okay, and she's standing right out there in the harbor. And on top of that, the book that she holds in her hand, in her arms, right, in her arm, has a poem written to commemorate people searching for freedom coming to America, written by a Jewish immigrant gal. Now, I'm trying to understand what could be more pro-American than that. You're celebrating freedom and democracy, and the victory over slavery in America, and serving as a welcome for people around the world who wish to come and escape tyranny. Hey, man, you can't beat that with a drum, with a stick, for God's sake. But see, those are the things that we need to make sure are taught, not just in our schools, but everywhere. And as far as, oh God, what do they call it? Not redemption, but basically some kind of payback for slavery. I don't think I don't think that's a good idea. Number one, because like I keep telling people, you have more descendants of Africans who don't look like me, who look like Joe Biden, for example, than you have people who look like me, right? The average person who is a descendant of African slaves in this country will be classified as white. And the minute you start saying, okay, well, we're giving out $1 million or $500,000 to everybody who ancestor, was brought from Africa in slavery, you're going to have so many white Americans, or what we call white people, they'll be at the head of the line. There'll be so many of them. Why? Because the human heart doesn't know race, believe it or not. And you had such a, it's so weird, America is. How you can have love and hate in the same community, sometimes in the same family, right? But then what about the land theft of Texas, for example? What about that? What about the fact that Chinese weren't even allowed to become citizens? Now, no group in this country was punished for who they are and lynched more than black people, okay? However, you also have to remember that we were not alone in being dumped on for our color. Mexicans were lynched, Chinese were lynched, and here's one that will really throw you. People like DeSantis, that governor down there, some of his ancestors or kinfolk might have been victims of lynching. Because at the turn of the last century, all right, it was also sport, not as much, but it was there. They used to hang Italians. And Louisiana was famous for lynching Italians, Italian immigrants. The governor of Louisiana made a statement saying that Italians were nothing but criminals and they were lower than Negroes. Now, he was full of crap on both counts, but that's part of the American saga, whether you like it or not. We must also remember, especially if you were in the entertainment field, you got to thank the Italians, because it was the Italians in their mafia organizations that beat the crap out of the Ku Klux Klan in the South. And when you talk about crossing over, so there's not just black folks entertaining black folks, but black folks being able to begin to reach out into a white audience, that was Italians, Jews, and Irish. That's how it happened. I mean, hey, man, don't get mad at me. It's in the books. It's in the books. I'm lucky because my parents were kind of older when they had me, right? And I was fortunate enough to be able to meet some of the people that lived through this period in our history. UB Blake, for example, you know, guys like him, God rest his soul. So it's not that anyone is trying to attack America by teaching history. Actually, I think that's the best thing about America because it's a very sorrowful, hurtful, vicious, but at the same time, a glorious history. You know, it was white folks that ran the Underground Railroad. Think about it. A bunch of white people risking their lives because a lot of them got strung up from a damn tree. But these people risked, and in many cases, gave their lives to help blacks escape slavery. So this idea about that DeSantis, crap that he talked about, oh, well, they just want to put the history out there to make white people and make white kids feel bad about themselves. Tell me something. You an 11-year-old white kid, how you going to feel bad to know that people who look just like you were willing to die to help make other human beings free? Should that 11-year-old white kid, should he be ashamed of himself because of John Brown? I think if I was a 11-year-old white kid, that would make me damn proud. Yeah, you know, especially, you know, my God, people standing up for justice, for humanity, and they gave their lives for it. Why is that something that we're supposed to be ashamed of? And then why is it the books that were written on the subjects, you know, that one that Oprah really pushed, I forgot the name of it, but why would we be ashamed of that? Why should Americans be ashamed of that? Yeah, you know, some very disgusting, ruthless, vicious things happen in this country. Yet by the same token, you had people of all colors that said, no, this is wrong. Created did not mean for human beings to live like this. And I'm going to do something about it. And you're going to tell me, Governor DeSantis, that that's something that we should not know about and shout from the rooftops and be proud of? That's why I say to the governor, sir, you are not an American. You are a fraud. And that's what I say to the Republican Party. You people are frauds. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because I grew up in the Republican Party. My parents were activists in the Republican Party. But you know, as they got older, going into the late 70s, early 80s, and this was after they had moved from New York down to Virginia, where my mom was from, they were they were active when they moved down to Richmond, but they were not happy warriors. And a lot of times, I know my mom, she started to talk about it more than my dad did. And sometimes he would just be sitting around, and I'm like, hey, when you going out to your Republican meeting? And sometimes he wouldn't say a word. Because they saw what was happening to the Republican Party, bit by bit, but they saw it. if we need to be ashamed of anything, we need to be ashamed of the fact that an American political party, one of the two major parties in this country, put a man like Donald Trump in the White House. That's what we need to be ashamed of. You know, now we finally got around to putting this guy on trial. Oh, well, he just forgot to turn in top secret information dealing with the order of battle for Iran. You know, oh, he just forgot about it. Oh, it was no big deal. He had it next to he had the documents in his sock drawer. You know, next to his stinky underwear. You know, come on. Let me say this while I still have the time this evening. Do you realize that Donald Trump, and this is what happens when you let yourself be ruled by hate and ignorance. Donald Trump made suckers, made chumps out of a large part of the voters in this country. And he used white racism to do it. And I don't think that that's something the Republican Party, at this stage in its existence, I don't think they'll ever be able to live that down. Frankly, I think the Republican Party, at the rate they're going to wind up going down the same road that the Federalist Party went, and the Whig Party went, and the Know Nothing Party went. Straight to the ash can of history. Because you let a guy, he cannot, you know, he wasn't even allowed to run a charity because he could not, him and his kids could not be trusted to run a charity for poor people, for veterans, right? For sick kids. Nothing, nada. The court said, no, you can never run a charity outfit in the state of New York again, period. Now, why in the hell would you want someone like that to be president of the United States? Why would you want someone like that to be in charge of the foremost democracy in written history? I don't get that. I really don't. This guy cannot be trusted to run a freaking charity, but you're going to trust him with the nation's secrets and with the red button? I don't understand that. Maybe, I guess I'm ignorant to a large extent. Because the only answer I can see for any of this is racism. You put in the 21st century now, this is not 1910, all right? In the 21st century, you put a guy in the White House that started off condemning an entire ethnic group. That's what you did. And you did it with a party that got its start dedicated to freedom and anti-slavery. And people don't see how crazy that is. People don't see how warped and twisted that is. This is a party that waged a war that cost over 1 million lives. I know they used to say 600,000. That's bullshit. Counting battlefield casualties sickness, right? All those people that they don't even know um, exactly how they died. They just died by 1865. They knew they were dead, right? So you're talking about waging a war that took almost 1 million lives, if not more, in the name of freedom and democracy. And you put this guy, first thing out of his mouth, Mexico sends us nothing but thieves, murderers, and rapists. Remember that? Remember those words? You remember that, right? That's who you put in charge of the world's supposedly strongest, greatest democracy. And then also, he said, look, if you are of this religion, you can't come to the United States. He tried to install a religious qualification for anyone to immigrate to the United States, unless they were his pals in Saudi Arabia, who he had certain, shall we say, business arrangements with. Yeah, that same Saudi Arabia that was responsible for 9/11. Oop! Not the Saudi Arabian government, just a strange coincidence that all those bombers, what was it, like 20 bombers? 19 of them were Saudi Arabian. But everybody else who's Muslim, no, you can't come in the United States. So when we're talking about the present situation in this country, we're talking about race, whether you like it or not. Oh, and the same, how should I say it, the same dance that the Republican Party plays with Jewish Americans. They blindly love Israel, but their base is anti-Semitic, as let me get a good one here. Goebbels of Nazi Germany. Remember Charlottesville in 2017? And the torches and the slogans that were shouted, and the Jews will not replace us. Trump's whole vehicle was about race and sex. Because, see, remember, Trump was not an anti-abortionist. But that's one of the things, one of the beer can stickers that he took upon himself so he could get in bed with the evangelicals, right? And that's exactly what happened. So if you're a person of color, if you're an independent thinking woman, oh, and God forbid, if you are a black person that doesn't skip the rope like my good friend here, Timmy Scott from South Carolina, you're no one. Like he said, blacks are stupid because the mass majority of us wouldn't think twice about voting for Donald Trump. And there's a reason for that. Because the whole Trump thing in New York has been nothing but every chance he gets to say something racist and bigoted, that's where he is. And there are a lot of prominent black people or I should, well, I won't say a lot, but there are quite a few prominent black celebrities, let's call them, right, who are very embarrassed and who have things to answer for because of the fact that Trump used to like to surround himself with, black athletes, black entertainers, because he wanted to have that persona. Hey, I'm cool. Look at who I'm hanging out with. You see. And that's one of the reasons why I say I'm not disrespecting any, especially like athletes, prominent black athletes of the day. And some of them out there, they're doing good work in the communities. But we don't have what we used to have when we had Dr. J out there, people like that. And I have some big problems with some of his sexual behavior with women. But there was a time even Bill Cosby, in his own kind of twisted way, was doing stuff for the community, right? And of course, Muhammad Ali, that goes without saying. The brothers who clenched their fists in '68 at the Olympics, another example. But see, that's why I say African Americans or Black Americans don't think I'm just tongue lashing white Americans. Oh no, because Black Americans need to recognize and study their own history themselves. See, that's why I say I'm talking about now. Excuse me. I think it's time to get ready to wrap up. But as I was saying, that's why I'm speaking like this, because this isn't about to attack white people, nor am I trying to attack black people. What I'm saying is we have certain things that all of us in America need to do. Talking about the study of history, are we teaching kids in high school and in universities the history of the American labor movement, its rise and its fall, and now it seems like it's trying to rise again? Do we teach about how we attacked our own coal miners? Where was that? West Virginia and Kentucky. Excuse me. Yeah, we actually bombarded with aircraft miners, working people. Yeah, we sure did. So there's a lot to know, a lot to understand. Does Governor DeSantis down there in Florida, does he want kids to learn about the Trail of Tears? How we dragged thousands upon thousands of Native American peoples from their homes here on the East Coast and forced them to march all the way out to Oklahoma. It's called the Trail of Tears for good reason. See, it's not just about, slavery was the biggest thing that happened in this country, okay? But it ain't just about slavery. And that's why, I would say that all history needs to be taught. It's time for Americans to really know who they are and where they came from. Let's talk about the potato famine. When the British government left millions of Irish men and Irish women and children to starve because they felt that Well, it'll be good for them because they're lazy. Yeah, that's why you have so many Irish in America. Same thing with Italians. They have their own issues to face, especially from southern Italy and Sicily. But see, this is what happens when people don't know who they are and where they're from. Because they allow themselves to be subject to any windbag. Now, as we wrap up, I just want you to keep something in mind. This country was not created by perfect people. Okay? The saints from above did not, they did not come here to America and say, America, arise. Didn't work that way. It was a dirty, nasty, cutthroat. It was tough, all right? It was populated usually by some of the worst people that Europe had. And as far as the Africans were concerned, it would just be like if you were walking around your hometown and I snuck up on you and banged you upside the head. The next thing you know, you wake up and you're on a boat heading to someplace else that you know nothing of. And see, the right wing, the Republican Party of today, and people of that ilk, they missed the whole point. These people, when you talk about the founding fathers, and yeah, you had founding fathers, you had founding mothers, you had founding black fathers and founding black mothers, and founding Jewish fathers and Jewish mothers, and so on and so forth. And the glory of America, what makes this country so great, potentially, is the fact that you took a bunch of a bunch of jive ass, whacked out, don't have two nickels to rub together type people, and you were able to take all of us, the good, the bad, and you created so far what could be called one of the greatest nations in the history of the planet. And that is what we should be teaching, not just in school either. All right? That's what America is all about. And anybody that tells you anything different, they're just being ignorant. Hear that, Governor DeSantis? We're talking about you. So listen, pay attention to what's happening with this Trump business. And no, don't go off in that, oh, well, they've all done it. No, that's not true. Clinton and Hillary, they never did anything even close to the stuff that Trump has done. All right? Trump is dangerous. Trump basically betrayed this country because, in my opinion, a lot of our secrets, they're gone. And you look me in the eye and you tell me that Donald Trump has just too much character to sell our nation's secrets. Look me in my eye and tell me that. And then when you go home tonight, look in the mirror and try and convince yourself of that. So listen, I enjoyed our short time together this evening. I look forward to our next meeting, same time, same place. This is Bob Gums with the Concerned Forum, and be good to each other. Good night.